Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Non-Content Podcast. This is another YouTube exclusive, as we are going to be discussing Batman the Caped Crusader, episodes 5 or 6. Please leave a 4 or 5-star review on our podcast channel. In addition, please subscribe on our YouTube channel. Give this video a like as you are listening and watching what we are producing here as part of From the Q Podcasting Network. My name is Jerome Q-san. As always, we are going to be discussing some movies and TV. Our focus has been celebrating anniversaries on the podcast, end of things, and here on our YouTube exclusives, we spent some time talking about X-Men 97, so definitely go check those out. And also, we have done 2 previous episodes covering Batman's Caped Crusader episodes 1 and 2 in one episode, and then 3 and 4 in another. This week we are discussing 5 and 6. Next week 7 and 8. 2 weeks we will finish the season by discussing episodes 9 and 10. Brian, episodes 5 and 6 take us into some very interesting places as Dr. Harley Quinn apparently wants to eat the rich, and there's a ghost in Gotham. So that's kind of what we have to look forward to in our discussion of these 2 episodes.
Okay, quick question. Did you watch Dexter? Because I did not.
I did watch Dexter. I definitely got some of those vibes in watching this, and clearly, I think that's what they were going for. The thing that I appreciate, though, is the fact that Harley Quinn and her, her issues are built aside from the Joker, but they feel consistent with her character. I don't know if you remember this, Brian, but Harley Quinn announced herself as a Bernie Sanders supporter in the Harley Quinn TV show that is also. That is on HBO Max. So it seems like she is at least being politically consistent.
Yeah, it seems like she's doing the good work, and I hate to say that because she's kind of demented and torturing these patients, quote unquote, but they're really like messed up people that she's torturing. So it's very much that Dexter effect. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm kind of like siding with her as more of a hero. I know that sounds very strange, but I don't know. I felt like she was actually doing some good, and like the fact was it onomatopoeia that was like the prime example in the King garb, right? That was onomatopoeia.
I mean, I thought they were going for the King Tut look. I thought that was kind of a callback to
King Tut. Okay, so King Tut
1966.
Yeah. So basically, she's just revamped, or she's kind of just changing the characters. She's torturing them and then making them become like her slave or something. So I thought that was a really interesting take. I thought she was going to straight up kill all of them, considering there's a lot of murder on the show already. But I like the fact that she's almost building this army. And at the end of the episode, you notice like they all follow her. And at first, I was thinking like, oh, I guess Batman's just going to save the day and let them all go. But it turns out they all followed her out the door willingly. So what does that tell you? I think whatever hypnosis, mental trick she's doing on them is clearly working, and all the torture's working. And now she's got like a crew of henchmen, which is really cool because it's not like they're like B-level henchmen. They're like actual villains that got converted to her control. So I thought that's a little cool twist. You know what I'm saying? We don't know all those villains by name, but there was like 5 or 6 villains there that are under her control, which I thought was really cool and something Joker would probably not have even thought of. So I like Harley Quinn standing on her own, being this kind of like really smart Dexter-esque villain. And I guess she hasn't killed anyone. I think she's just torturing them, which is, again, where you're playing that line of like, is she going too far? Is she being a hero? Is it this gray area? You know what I'm saying? So I like this gray area that Harley's in right now, and I'm kind of leaning towards that she's a good guy, which I know sounds strange, but hey, the way this was playing out in this episode, it seems like she was doing some real good for society. Some things that that the government's not willing to do to kind of correct some of these criminals.
It's also worth noting that there is, if not a polyamorous relationship, there is clearly a queer relationship being teased between potentially Quinzel and either Gordon or Renee Montoya. So there's also that angle to it. I think what happens in this episode also allows us to recontextualize the relationship that Quinzel and Bruce Wayne had in episode number 3, because quite clearly she was trying to manipulate the situation, potentially get Bruce Wayne under her purview. So that was a definite possibility coming out of that episode. And I think watching what happens in episode 5 kind of makes you understand where Quinzel is coming from.
Yeah, that would have been interesting too if she was able to get Bruce under her spell. But that's kind of like the challenge that episode was with her sitting down with him. It's like they had, when Bruce put up that wall, that mental wall, that kind of like set off a red flag in Harley Quinn. So I like that battle of mental wits kind of going on there. The only thing that really kind of threw me off on this episode was like blowing up her facility at the end. I felt like that was like totally unnecessary. I don't know what was going to be accomplished there. It just seemed like they
I
needed
think
to
she's
just
trying to
blow
clear
it up.
all the evidence and basically be kind of on her own again. Like clearly she knows that
I guess
she's not going to
I don't know.
totally get away with it. I think
I
that's the
guess
angle
that's the
that they're
vibe.
taking.
Okay, because it just seemed like, why is she destroying her stuff? It's going to be like a total like it's going to set you back. What are you doing? And then because it felt like she didn't totally get caught. It just felt like Batman caught her, and I don't know. I felt like they could have worked together, but she kind of opted to just kind of run away and blow up all the evidence. But so we'll see. I feel like she's like leaning towards the good side, but probably she's going to do something so heinous that it's going to turn me back. So that's probably where that's leading to.
I mean, what if she's the one that turns the Joker bad?
That's what
Like
I'm thinking. That might be the twist, I think, is what's coming. I think that's what's coming, and I think she's going to find out that Bruce is Batman, but no one's going to believe her or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Like
I could
when Riddler
definitely see
found
that
out.
as a possibility.
Yeah, when Riddler found out in Batman Forever at the end and no one listened to him. Like I like that kind of take when when someone's screaming at you like this is Batman and they're like, you're fucking crazy. There's no way Bruce Wayne can be Batman. That asshole. Like the way they set it up is like there's no way this asshole can be Batman. So I like where they're going with this. I hope Harley has more to do in the next couple episodes, but we'll see. But I hope she has a big finale or something to do in the finale, like something big in terms of the story.
So, and we're going to talk about this more as we get into episode 7, especially. But I do have to say, the thing that impresses me is that they really are giving a lot for Renee Montoya and Barbara Gordon. Like, Barbara Gordon is really playing the role of the detective here. And in many of these episodes, Batman is seemingly more of a supporting character. Obviously, the focus eventually does turn to Batman because, I mean, the reality is that he is really the only one that has the power to stop Dr. Quinzel. But ultimately, Barbara Gordon is the one that also kind of figures out what's going on, and she is horrified by what's happening. And even though Barbara Gordon is clearly much more progressive-minded than her father, being a public defender, I think you definitely see her getting that pull in some ways from Batman, but also from Dr. Quinzel too.
Yeah, that's going to be a really interesting dynamic. Yeah. What I find interesting too is that they kind of left that date off the table, like the date never happened with Montoya. So I'm guessing we're going to get that, sappy romantic moment where they finally get their dinner together. That was the vibe I was getting. Because anytime you leave something off the table like that, we're going to have dinner another time or something like that. It's always like a for the future. You know what I'm saying? It's like they're going to do that scene in the future to kind of give you that happy moment. But we'll see if that moment is kind of switched with Barbara Gordon. And the interesting thing too I noticed about Commissioner Gordon himself is that we're actually getting like the really old man Gordon this time that Batman meets for the first time. Usually it's young Gordon. He's not even commissioner yet when he meets Batman for the first time. So they really switched it up where like Barbara is really like the young Gordon now in the series, and that
Right. Well,
that makes a lot more
what I
sense.
think has happened in the past is that if Batman is early in his career, then Gordon is also early in his career too. In this case, Batman is clearly positioned as being younger, but what I like so much about it is that they're clearly positioning Commissioner Gordon as potentially. I mean, we're going to talk about this next week, but I think there's a very real situation where Commissioner Gordon actually is assassinated and Montoya becomes the commissioner of Gotham City at some point, or something to that effect, because again, there is a huge age disparity. And the thing that I like is that Montoya has been so well developed. I think they've done a really good job of just making her feel like a fully realized character in this series. And episode 5, I think, is another really good example of that. Episode 5, I really enjoyed a lot. And part of it is just the way that they are changing the Harley character, and again, providing another interpretation of it. And I think in terms of female characters, I mean, you look across Marvel and DC. I mean, is there a better and more interesting character than Harley Quinn right now? You look at all the different interpretations of that character from the original animated series to what Margot Robbie has done. I mean, Lady Gaga is going to be Harley Quinn in the Joker movie, which, regardless of what you feel about that movie, Lady Gaga playing that character is a really big deal. And now you've got this as well. So it just feels like we have all these great versions of this one character, and it's refreshing that it is a female character and not just another male character.
Yeah, credit to Bruce Timm, man. Who would have thunk that creating this character just for the show would have just spawned all these different comics and different iterations. So it's really cool to see because considering Harley Quinn's history, she was just, a sidekick to the Joker, and everyone just got more interested in her. And yeah, look, I'm not a Lady Gaga fan, and I really have no interest in Joker too. But we'll see what the reaction is, because based on some of the trailer reactions I've seen and some of the more Deadpool screenings that I've been to, that Joker trailer gets a really pretentious response, and like half the audience is just like, I don't know. It just feels like a mixed bag on that one. We'll see. We'll see. But I'm definitely not going to watch it. But yeah. And so this episode I give like a 7.5 out of 10, almost an 8. But I like where it's setting up things for the future, and I like Harley Quinn being on her own. Yeah, I think the next episode is kind of where this show kind of like made me question some things, because I mentioned in the last episode that I like that this show is grounded and that there's no supernatural characters, and this episode happens and it just went all out the window because now we got ghosts. And the way they set it up, it seemed very Scooby-Doo-ish at first, where like Batman's trying to like find the scientific answers to why there's a ghost. Like he's touching like the physical material around him, yet he can't interact with the ghost himself, and that the ghost can physically interact into the world. And it was just trying to like halfway through the episode, I was trying to figure out, okay, what's the catch? Is this a projector? What's going on here? And then they just said, nope, he's a ghost. And I was just like, oh, so they're not doing.
I definitely have mixed feelings about it because I kind of like that they went there, but also I think it changes the tone of the show from something that is more grounded into potentially going into some different areas. But clearly, this is a show that wants to play in different genres. It does not just want to be a traditional Batman story. This is a television show that is going to play in the noir space. It's going to play in the horror space. It's going to even have a little bit of romance to it. So that's the thing that I think is both good and bad about it. And I think the biggest issue that I have is that this, given where they are going, it feels like this needed to be 18 to 20 episodes as opposed to a 10 episode season. And that's generally the complaint that I have about these half hour shows, is that they should not be 10 episodes. They should be longer. That has always been my issue. And this is a really good example, whereas I think this would be a fun sidetrack if this was a longer season, but it feels like, we are also threading the needle between the ghost story and the fact that Harvey Dent is taking this donation. And essentially, by the end of the episode, things are not looking so good for one Harvey Dent. I will say that. But the thing that I appreciate about this episode is we do get to see Alfred in action a little bit. And whereas the previous episode dealt with the rich, the thing that I liked about this episode is that it is the working class that is being robbed. So you do get some class discussion, which I think is a positive.
Yeah, and I've never heard of like a villain or a ghost or like, you know what I mean? Like that. It was just so obsessed with like getting rid of poor people. Like, God, that was so like, holy shit. They went super like, like twirling the mustache kind of villain, like way over the top with it. And I get it. It's supposed to send the message that the rich don't like the poor and all that kind of thing. But man, I've never heard of a villain that was just straight up wanted to kill the poor. And that's this villain of Jim Craddock. I don't know. For some reason, I was thinking like this would have been better if the big reveal at the end is that this was just a dude in a suit or in a costume or whatever, very much like Scooby-Doo. But they just went with the whole possession angle at the end too, with Alfred getting possessed by the spirit and then having to trap the spirit in a vial type of thing, which they kind of did that in Dragon Ball. Actually, it was like a thing where they contained an evil entity and they just contained it for hundreds and thousands of years. In this case, I don't know what's going to happen to Jim Craddock, but he's stuck in a vial right now. It's just so weird. And the fact that it was written by Mark Bernardin, if you don't know who Mark Bernardin is, he's kind of like the co-host of the Kevin Smith like YouTube podcast channel. One of the co-hosts, I think it's like Fat Man Beyond. And based on his kind of like recent reviews in the last couple of years, he just seems like so like lackadaisical and just not really interested in like comic book movies anymore and stuff like that. Yet he writes this, and it's so different than the whole season, and yet it just seems like I don't know, like he just missed the mark a little bit because yes, this is a good idea for like an episode, but I feel like this is something you would set up as like, or take the premise of it, use it as like a full 90-minute horror movie and just go with it. Because that would totally work. You know what I'm saying? Like something like this kind of plot where you got like an evil spirit ghost on a horse hunting people down. You know, this grudge against the lower class that works on its own. It doesn't have to be a Batman story. So I just felt like some of the plots in this season, like this one and the Clayface plot, those standalone plots could have been their own horror movies, man. And I just felt like maybe some of these writers are wasting some of their good stuff on the Batman episodes and taking the good premises for movies and using it for episodes. But man, I just feel like some of these writers need to save their great stuff because I feel like this is like some good stuff you can use as like an outline for a movie, but they're using it
I
for
mean,
the
I
show.
just don't know. I just don't know that you're going to get a Clayface in a movie. Like, I just don't.
Well, you don't have to do Clayface. You can just take the premise and create its own thing. Like it doesn't have to be
Yeah,
Clayface. Like I mean, these ideas for these episodes, this one and the one we're going to talk about next week, the ones that are just horror oriented, they can just stand on their own and be their own movies. I just feel like it just feels like they have these great ideas and they use them for the Batman show, and it just feels like just save your good stuff, man. Because I would save some of these episodes for like individual pitches for movies because some of these episodes are really well structured like that.
I just don't know that Warner Brothers is going to go for that. I mean, the fact that this show is not on HBO Max and is in fact on Amazon Prime, I think is exactly part of the problem. I think that in terms of Batman, there is such a narrow scope and such a narrow interpretation of that character that I would argue we are watching the show on Amazon for the very reason that you're stating, because there are some kind of out there ideas, and even if they're not totally successful, I would rather them expand the idea of a superhero story than just tell the same thing over and over again. So, while I don't agree, I don't necessarily think this episode was totally successful. I appreciate the ideas conceptually, and the biggest thing that I would say is that the thing about the first half of this season is there's been a lot of distance between Batman and Alfred to the point where he doesn't really call him by his first name. And I think the idea is in this episode, especially, we saw it a little bit with the flashback at the end with Alfred kind of going on his own and seeing like his perspective as Bruce's parents are being killed. But the thing that I like is that you are seeing Alfred really embrace the role of not only being the butler but also being the caretaker as well. So I would argue that that is the main reason for this episode to exist, even more so than the monsters themselves, is they are trying to build up the relationship between Alfred and Batman and get them to a point where they care about each other and they're not just servant and servee, I guess, for lack of a better term. So I would say that that's what they're going for. And again, I don't think it's totally successful, but I really do appreciate the fact that they're trying these different things. And to me, I think the TV space is always where you're going to get more experimentation than with the movies. You're just never going to get that. You're never going to get an episode like Almost Got 'Em in a movie. You're not going to get the episode where it's just Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn kind of doing their version of Thelma and Louise. You're just not going to get those as movies because there's a lack of Batman. But with a show like this, like you could do those experiments, and even if they don't totally work, you could put it within the context of a season. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about this episode. I would definitely not put it kind of in the tippy top rankings, but I definitely am curious to see if they continue going in the supernatural realm, because it's something that with Ra's al Ghul especially, like it's something that feels inevitable.
Yeah, we'll see what happens because I don't know. The tone of this episode, like I mentioned, was just a little off. But I did like the last 5 minutes where it's like Alfred and Bruce kind of coming together and having a moment together, and the possession thing and getting over the possession. So that was cool. Overall, these two episodes were fine. Like I like the Harley Quinn episode much better. I don't know. Mark Bernardin, like I mentioned before, he just seems so lackadaisical and just like so uninterested, and I don't know. It just seems like he's expecting, when he reviews movies nowadays, it's like he expects a different plot, and when he doesn't get the plot that he wants, he just brings down the whole movie. And I don't know, man. I just seem to notice like some of the numbers for like the Kevin Smith podcast been going down the last couple of years. I think some things need to change on that channel. But yeah, I just
I mean, I think comic book movies just in general are less popular. I think that's probably the even bigger issue. And I don't disagree with you that there are probably some things about the podcast that are certainly bothering people. But I think and look, Deadpool and Wolverine was still very very successful. I don't want to discount the fact that a comic book movie can still make $1 billion in this atmosphere. But I think comic book franchises are generally waning a little bit, and unless there is something very specific or very special, like there's too much out there for everything to be successful. Like I don't know that this show is even going to be successful because of when it's coming out, and you know, are we? I certainly hope that we get a season 2 of it. I hope we get um, more stories because I definitely want to see this world expanded, but I think it's really tough. I think this show is coming out at a very tough place, and I don't know whether it's beneficial that it's on Amazon instead of Max. But again, I think we're definitely getting some different stories, and I do like that.
For sure. I'm excited for the next couple episodes as well. So I haven't really spoiled too much for myself. So still trying to slow burn the series. But from what I recall, like when this dropped on August 1st, that first week on Amazon Prime was kind of listed as the #1 show being streamed. So hopefully that's a good sign of things to come. But as of right now, it's probably one of the more popular shows on Amazon for the month of August. But we'll see what happens when Lord of the Rings comes next month, because I'm kind of curious to see how the ratings. I don't know. They're probably going to drop on that one too, but I love the Lord of the Rings show. But let's see where Amazon Prime goes, because I feel like some other shows, it's one and done. It seems like for some of these Amazon shows, maybe one or
I mean,
two
it's a
seasons.
general
That's it.
problem.
But
The television model is broken because we are not getting 22 episodes every TV season. We're getting 8 episodes every 2 years. That is not a sustainable model for television. I think you can have event series, certainly. I don't want to discount the importance of that, but just having every single show be 8 to 10 episodes, including this one, and releasing it all as a binge, I just think it's really problematic. I think the show would have been much better suited if it was releasing 1 or 2 episodes every week, as opposed to just releasing the whole thing. And I want to really let people kind of absorb things, because although there is a bigger story being told, I really do like the fact that each episode kind of feels like it's telling its own story at the same time.
yeah, that's what I want to. So I guess we kind of wrapped up our discussion for this week. Any final thoughts on Harley Quinn and the Gentleman Ghost?
The Gentleman Ghost, it was fun. I mean, I don't know how we could really talk about him as a character, but the thing that I like so much is I like the Harley Quinn suit. I feel like it feels very 1940s. I really like that part of it. Just that they're bringing in the new dynamics of and just changing things up a little bit. I really like that. So, big fan of the costume. I also, again, to see Alfred in action was really cool, and just the development of the police characters as well. Really, really good stuff all around in those areas. But yeah, definitely episode 5 is much better than episode 6.
For sure, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion next week, because again, there's another supernatural episode coming up that was very questionable, but I felt like, man, this would have made a great Blumhouse movie. But we'll talk about that next week.
Yes, we will indeed. For Brian, I'm Jerome. Thank you so much for listening. We will talk to you again next week for another YouTube exclusive discussing episodes 7 and 8.